Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Rainbow Children's Hospital. My name is Dr. Rohit, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for today. We have taken this initiative of doing webinars for our parents and families every Sunday. The second series of webinars. We had one last Sunday on vaccination. You all attended. So for today, what we are doing is a very interesting topic, which is COVID-19 infection in children. How do we detect it? How do we diagnose it? And how do we ensure that it's treated well? And also, obviously, we also cover some parts of prevention of the disease. With us, we have two panelists. I have with me Dr. Venkata Lakshmi, who is our Senior Consultant Pediatrics, Banjara Hospital. We also have Dr. Vijayana with us, who is also a Senior Consultant Pediatrics in our Banjara Hospital. Great. So before we start, I just wanted to mention that the last session that we had is available on YouTube. We had the session with Dr. Faisal and Dr. Preetham. Just go to YouTube and search Rainbow Patient Webinar, and you should be able to see this video. So if you have any comments, please do share them. Let's start with this session. So the first question that we have, very common, and there is a lot of questions that we see in the guys. How likely are the kids to get infected? Dr. Vijayana, if you can cover this question.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Rohit. And see, whenever any infection, anything like this in the pandemic, we are always anxious the little vulnerable kids we have across. So the question asks, is the kids prone for this infection? Yes. Any age group from a newborn baby to a teenager, 18-year-old can get infected. But the good news is the percentage of the kids which are infected with the COVID infection are less. If across the globe, whatever the data emerged so far, since December we started in China and Italy, UK, USA, only 2 to 3%, even less than 2% of infected people were children. But if you look at the population as such, the 40% of population in India are children under 18 years. So the 40% constitute overall population, but when it comes to the infection, it's only 2 to 3%. Whereas in US, the 25% of population, they are pertaining to the infection. So yes, it can get infected every child, any child across the age group, but the less frequently than adults. Can't hear you, Dr.
Madam, are you seeing similar kind of a trend in your practice too?
Actually, for the past 5-6 months, we've been on the lookout for the onset of COVID infections in our busy pediatric, all the consultants. And we fortunately, we are seeing quite a less number of patients in our busy OPDs, which is a good thing.
Okay, madam. Just continuing, madam, for question for you that most of our patients are asking, what are the symptoms commonly seen in kids due to COVID-19 infection? Is it different from what you see in adults?
The symptoms as such, what we see in babies are quite varied. Most of the times, what we see are what we call as asymptomatic that is, these kids might have COVID, but we won't know anything at all. At home, they'll be running around, playing, eating, drinking, and we won't know they're COVID. The only way we would know is when any one of their parents, the grandparents, or the caretakers, or anybody who visited them had a close contact with the patient and they tested positive, and that's when we would test on these babies as well, and then they would know they were COVID. Otherwise, we would not even know, which is a good thing because they are asymptomatic and they're fine otherwise. The only problem with these is they can be a carrier, source of infection for at home, some grandparents, and which are more vulnerable population basically. The second set of patients are there who can come to the outpatient with a bit of a fever, bit of a cough, and short breathing difficulties. And these are the ones which, when you come to the OP, we should also look for other symptoms inside, like whether they have any muscle pain or any muscle chills. The older generation, the thing is, the babies, the small babies cannot complain of things that I have a muscle pain, I have a sore throat, I have a tummy pain, I have chills. Those things babies cannot. So the younger babies will just come with a bit of fever, a bit of cough, and a bit of breathing difficulty, feeding difficulty. They might drool, they might not want to take the feed, and then irritability, lethargy, and things. The slightly older kids will come and say they have fever, have a bad sore throat, have coughing the whole night, and it's very persistent, not relieving with anything. And at the same time, they get chest pain is there, feel shortness of breath is there, or then they'll say they have a tummy pain, and some kids even present without fever, they just have present loose motion. Diarrhea and vomiting is also some kids present as a presenting symptom for COVID illness. And some kids become better with these symptoms with some symptomatic treatment. And when a child with fever, cough, and shortness of breath, if these three symptoms come together, that it's a higher chance, almost 80%, that this child is a COVID infected child. So we should go ahead and do a testing of such a patient. But these children, most of them become better. The other set of patients are there which become worsen. Their symptoms are worsen. Then they have shortness of breath. They will not feed at all. There's sleepiness. There's excessive lethargy, and then slightly delirious. And they become blue when they're small babies might become blue when they are feeding, or they might have apnea, so they might not breathe at all for some time. And older kids will have chest pain, shortness of breath, and say, I'm not able to take a few steps, I can't climb 5 stairs, I have chest pain, I have tummy pain, vomiting. Those are the ones which are slightly serious conditions where they need to come to the hospital immediately. And they need to be admitted and taken care of. And the last, but what's happening nowadays is in the past few months, what the pediatricians are noticed across the world is that there's some kids, for example, you had COVID, tested COVID positive in the first week of June or so. By the third or fourth week of the same month or the end of the month, some kids are coming back with severe symptoms like inflammation of the whole body, like they have red eyes, red lips, cracked lips. Then they have some swelling of the body, and the blood pressures will be low. They'll be very sick-looking babies. The reason why I want to highlight this condition is, though it is a very, fortunately, a very minor, minimum number of babies get these problems. The parents, once the child is tested positive, they should keep the child under observation till about a month or so to observe for this phenomenon, which is it's occurring in this pediatric population. So basically, from a very mild symptom to a very serious symptoms can occur. The mild symptoms are more common, and the serious and the very serious, where the whole body is inflamed, those conditions are fortunately very less in babies that we are seeing now.
Yeah, madam, I think that's true. So, Dr. Vijay, are you seeing any atypical symptoms that you're seeing which might be confused with COVID, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, Madam has nicely described the spectrum of the illness, and you can look at the literature across the globe, and 60 to 70% no symptoms are mild symptoms. When it comes to the atypical features, and yes, some of the kids are coming with loose motions, vomiting, but the proportion is less though. And some kids are just muscle pains and nothing else, just muscle pains. But having said that, as Madam rightly said, all these symptoms, which are well described in adults, are less frequent in children. Okay, and one of the serious part of this illness, as Madam rightly mentioned already, multi-system inflammatory syndrome has been also reported from India, but also we are seeing Telangana and Hyderabad as well. And the good thing is they are responding to the standard treatment. Yeah, so that we could say that is another atypical presentation on the serious side. Atypical, which is a multi-system inflammatory syndrome, and the child's can be sick. But bear in mind, bear in mind, parents don't panic. The percentage of the incidence of that is rare. Whereas the 80% with the loose motion vomiting is little bit more common compared to that.
Great. I think that's what, leads to our next question, Dr. Vijay, for you. So we talked about typical symptoms, right? So we know that now the rains have started. It's also season for dengue, flu, gastroenteritis. Fortunately, our kids are not going out and not eating street food, so gastroenteritis is less. But still, we were very scared about certain symptoms and suddenly thought it is COVID. Now all these diseases also come up. So how do you people diagnose? How do I differentiate between something which is serious and something that is not serious?
Absolutely. So it's a very, very good question, Dr. Rohit. And so because we are in a very, very difficult and a very special conditions at the moment. So any child who is sneezing, who is coughing, the question comes to a parent mind or a caretaker mind, oh, is it COVID? Or how do now the monsoon has started, as you rightly said, the dengue may come up, and also the typical common cold and the influenza and flu. And one thing I would like to say in the beginning, these all infections are viral in origin. That means all these are caused by this. No wonder they share the symptoms among themselves. They all cause skin fever. They can also cause a little bit of cough, cold, and runny nose. But I'll take the time. The common thing, the common virus we see, the common cold virus. Okay, it also comes from the corona family, but the previous old brothers and sisters of the new corona. So what does it cause? A little bit of runny nose, a slightly dull child, but still active, running around, mild fever. So that is not COVID. A little bit of fever, that is a common cold. And people, you often confuse this with influenza or flu. But flu is another different virus infection where symptoms can be very prominent, high grade fever and very body aches. And child can be very lethargic, weak, can't want to eat, drink. And that, I'm afraid, as a close symptomatology with the COVID, and that child needs to be seen by the doctor. Then comes to the dengue, which is another common during the monsoon. And yes, madam also agree with me that we started seeing some dengue cases. And in dengue, and this is also a viral illness, but interestingly, it has a fever, but it does not have usually cough and cold. Okay, and it's a high-grade fever which continues and can present with the rash. Having said that, any viral infection can present with the rash. What I would say to the parents is, if a child is well, mild fever, little bit of runny nose, not to panic. The fever is going beyond 2 days. It is high-grade fever, 102, 103. The child is not usual himself. I think that child needs to be checked to look for either it is COVID or non-COVID. But bear in mind, even during this pandemic season, other infections also can happen.
So, ma'am, I'm sure your patients must be just calling and panicking. As children get sick, we panic. So, are you finding parents just calling and saying, hey, I have a symptom. How do I differentiate from COVID? Are you seeing that in your practice too?
Yeah. We get a lot of video consultators on for us. So a lot of patients do call us and say, especially the ones who are earlier asthmatics, who are allergic bronchitis, and those are the children who are and underlying comorbid conditions. They are the ones who are very worried about any bit of cough, cold, and all. And we really have to reassure them most of the time, saying that look, if this we do video consult and see the babies and say, look, fine, he looks fine, he's running around, he's eating back, everything is fine. So just don't panic. These are the signs, like as Dr. Vijayan has already mentioned. So you need to come down to the hospital, and then we'll assess the patient and then help you out.
Yeah, that's good. So, madam, just continuing, there's this huge amount of issue saying, oh, you have symptoms, let's do a test. I need to do a COVID test. So what's your guidance to your patients? Do we need tests every time, or how do we define when do we need a test?
Every child with a fever does not need a COVID test. Because in any basic pediatric OPD, you do see a lot of other illnesses at this time of the year and generally throughout the year. Like, for example, as Dr. Vijayan already mentioned, the flus, the influenzas, the dengues and all that. And at the same time, we do surround things like urinary tract infections. Then you see the child comes with a fever, but it asks for the history. They give history of the pain while passing urine. and then you know it's a urinary tract infection. So then, so obviously that child does not require COVID testing. We just complete urinary examination, you know the diagnosis. And the second things commonly that would see a child is crying, fever, but cold is there, and cries when you touch the ear, and then you know it's a simple middle ear infection which is causing the problem. So some kids have mild, some diarrhea here and there, and so a lot of other normal pediatric illnesses that we see. We should learn to differentiate those from the COVID and reassure the parents that this is what your child has. Your child does not necessarily have a COVID and does not need the test. But when we would test is the million-dollar question. We all would agree saying that we should definitely test when the child has symptoms which are very classic of COVID, like fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Then, of course, definitely we have no qualms about testing the COVID. We straight away go ahead and see with the appropriate timing after the exposure to a particular person or starting of the symptoms, you go ahead and do the COVID test. That's one place where we would not hesitate to do it. The second time we would all generally do this when the parents are test positive in a family, or the grandparents are test positive in a family. And then obviously the parents also would like to know whether the child is positive or not, because a lot of family dynamics that goes on at home. So where to keep the child is positive, where to keep the child, if mother is positive, where to keep the child, whether the grandparent is what to keep the child, or the child itself is positive, what to do. So a lot of family dynamics that goes because of the isolation, quarantining, and protecting the elderly at home. So we do have, but those situations we go ahead and do COVID tests if the child is slightly asymptomatic or had mild symptoms. And the third scenario where we are seeing, where we're doing the COVID test, is the child has traveled to a place or abroad, or travel to a place where there's still the spread of ongoing community spread is still happening of COVID virus in that particular area, and the child has minimal symptoms, then we go ahead and do it. And another set of population where we would like to do are then comorbidities like children underlying cancers or underlying heart disease, underlying immunosuppressive therapy, nephrotic syndrome. So those children, even with mild symptoms, we don't fit into the criteria for us to make a clinical diagnosis of COVID. We would go ahead and do those tests. So there are various scenarios which are very confusing, and each one has their own view about it. But I'm sure Dr. Vijayanand would agree that if he has any further this thing, I'm sure he would love to say something about it.
Yeah, Dr. Vijay, question. So we have seen, calls coming in where the parents are positive, and they have symptoms, and the child is absolutely fine, and they get sent to maybe grandparents' house or somewhere, absolutely asymptomatic. Should we test them?
Well, I mean, so its answer is yes, I know. And as Madam nicely described, in the sense, every child with fever in this pandemic does not need a COVID test. But again, it depends how you are monitoring. If the child is completely asymptomatic, looked after by a elderly and who is vigilant, and probably using the treatment options, if they can monitor the child closely for at least 14 days, then you may say no. But I think that what we observed, and Madam also agree with me, and a lot of these parents are really anxious and they want to know. If they want to know, I think now we are beyond the level of contact tracing and containment. So because it is in the community spread, so it depends. I think it is working with the partnership with the family, but any symptom definitely should be checked. And if not, then given the choice to a family, and then, but whether you do a test or not in asymptomatic people, I think the 14 days being vigilant and monitoring these kids is very important.
Yeah, that's true, Dr. Vijay. I think the initial phases of panic is over. Now we have much more data to say what has to be done. And obviously, between the two of you, you see a large population of patients in Hyderabad. I'm sure you have a great experience in that. Okay. So the next question, and which we have, is Dr. Vijayanand, for you itself, that adults are getting sick. There are no beds available. Whatever. There are a lot of issues in the city. So do the children become sick? Have you and Madam seen very sick children? You talked about mild. Have you seen sick children? Very sick.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, the severity of the illness due to COVID infection is less in children. Take Italy, you take UK, you take USA and China and all the public. Even the same experience we are having in India as well. The amount of, as we earlier discussed, the amount of kids needing admission is less. So around maybe anywhere ranging from 5 to 10%, even sometimes it's 15%. And the children getting very sick and critical care treatment, like intensive care treatment, is also less. And another thing about the children are those who are also needing critical care are getting better in comparison to adults more compared to adults. And then you may ask why this is the case. We don't know really, but there are certain epidemiological evidences and there is some scientific thought processes. Children have an active immune system compared to the adults, and children have been given a lot of vaccination which also can protect. They can the other coronaviruses like common cold may help them. And also one of the things that Madam already mentioned is one severe illness could happen with this is multi-system inflammatory disease. That means that your own body immunity can fight against the child. So that is also has got a good outcome. We did see such children in Mumbai and also in Hyderabad and got better with the usual standard treatment. And the good news is the less likely to become sick with COVID infection in children, and even if they do, they get better. Another important thing I would like to say here is which kids are going to get more sick? The kids who have underlying long-term illnesses, like a uncontrolled diabetes, because we do see nowadays type 2 diabetes in teenagers, and also a chronic lung problems, a long-term lung problem, and also a genetic condition, a metabolic condition, or a chronic condition. And also kids, what they observe the data is kids under 1 year can become very sick. So, but in general, I think it is a good news for families and the caretakers to know that the kids are becoming less sick. Even they do, they are getting better than adults.
Venkatalakshmi madam, in practically in your practice, have you seen any child getting sick from COVID?
To be honest, I have not seen in my practice, though in the hospital scenario like ours, we have seen and of course heard about other patients being admitted and falling sick, but in my own practice, fortunately, I have not seen many sick patients at all. Only mild variety that I have seen so far. And but of my colleagues also, the experience that I have spoken to, shared knowledge is that the subsequents are getting admitted, but fortunately they are getting better.
That's good, ma'am. And even in our other centers in other cities, we have seen that they come with mild symptoms, we treat them and they send them back. So that's good. That's great news. Okay. So the next question, ma'am, for you itself is that hospital admission, right? People become panicky. Oh, it's COVID positive. We have to go to a hospital. We need oxygen. Support is needed. So when do we decide about hospital admission? And at Rainbow, you know it well, and what kind of treatment options are available? This is a very common question that we have heard.
Actually, once a child becomes result comes as COVID positive, what we should do, first thing you should see is that whether the child is symptomatic or asymptomatic. If the child has any particular symptoms like any severe height, temperatures, and then not keeping anything down, and a lot of vomitings, and they're not feeding, and shortness of breath, breathing difficulty. Those are the things that you should first discuss with the patient on online consultation or personal consultations when you do it. So if the child is absolutely asymptomatic, there's no need for any admission at all. Fortunately, most of the patients, we will already telling all this while, that most of the patients are asymptomatic. They do not have any fever probably, mild bit of cough. Other than that, they do not have any major symptoms, which is a very good thing. So these patients, generally we ask them to isolate the children, give plenty of breath to them, hydrate them properly, give plenty of fluids, and then give symptomatic treatment. Like for fever, you give some Prosen, bit of cough cold, you give some medicines, until the aches and pains, give some Prosen, and then just cuddle, give child moral support, and then don't talk negative about COVID in front of the child. The child does become more scared than the disease, actually. The fear that kills rather than the disease sometimes. So you have to be home quarantining the patient. You should take care of in all aspects of the child's well-being. So what in this aspect, what the patients should do is that for the next 14 days, once the child is positive, should be under the care of the healthcare worker, some health of your own doctor who has a facility for home quarantine assessment, like we have in Rainbow, we have called specific called home quarantine assessment, where children with COVID positive are enrolled into our system, and then they're completely followed for the next 14 days. Dr. Vijay, 14 days, these children have to be followed thoroughly every day. The nurse calls you and asks how you're doing, what's your saturations. They teach them, we send them a saturation monitor. They check the saturations morning and evening. And the slightly older kids, after exercise of 3 to 6 minutes, is when it's slightly older kids, like in adults, we do them to get this saturation checked. And then they should check the heart rates and the temperatures and what the intake is. Where possible, if they have a BP machine at home, they can do that as well. And just ask questions. And the doctor does a consultation once in 2-3 days in a video consult and see the baby and assess the baby to see if the color is all right. But the child is really running around playing, saying hi to you, and obviously is fine. And the child is looking very slightly lethargic, and you can make out the color of the child, the breathing difficulty, like the excess movements of the chest, and then the audible signs of respiratory distress. That's when we would advise them to come over and then come to the Rainbow COVID clinics that we have. Yeah, one thing that I'd like to advise, the share with you all is that we have all the Rainbow centers are all COVID free, and we have a special designated place of called Rainbow COVID Center in road number 10, where we take care of all these babies who need COVID care, and from mild to severest form of the illness. Like the mild to moderate are the ones they're vomiting, they cannot keep any fluids down, the parents are worried with the high temperatures and they're not able to feed the babies. Those babies can come in. The ones who are having breathing difficulties, the saturations are slightly lower than what we would expect, and then they're having feeding problem because of the breathing difficulty and becoming blue, they might require oxygen and other treatment. We have facility for that. And then it becomes really sick, and then they need ventilation, and then they need ECMO, and at the high end of the treatment, we have the facility for that. And then, if, unfortunately, if they go further down to this multi-system inflammation disease that people are very scared of, that is where your whole body gets inflamed, and then all the organs get affected, like the heart, the lung, the liver, the kidneys, all organs are sort of get affected in this particular problem, which fortunately is very rare. We have a particular protocol set for all these patients to report the requirements, what should be done. Particular people are designated to look after that separately, a particular nursing staff, everything, the whole system is entirely separated, so only the COVID babies are taken care of in that particular facility. So we want to reassure the patients to say that we have everything there to take care of any babies. Hopefully not need the facility, but it is there if anybody needs it.
Okay. Yeah, so Dr. Vijay, so there was one question saying that, okay, if the mother is symptomatic, okay, and the child is asymptomatic and mother is positive, can they stay together in the same room? Can we quarantine them and manage them till you decide hospital admission? Can we do that, or they have to be separate?
Well, if we know the COVID status of the child, and if the child is positive, and they can, but again, it's a good, if somebody is symptomatic, better to be quarantined, because there is also this concept of the more the workload, more the symptoms can increase. So in ideal world, yes, mother can be separated, the child is asymptomatic and looked after by some other caretaker. If again, having said that, we can talk about ideal things, but ideal things are not present all the time. If they have nobody else to look after, they don't have a choice, I'm afraid. And can I like to add something what Madam said earlier? Well, I do get a phone calls from my parents, families, and also friends where the child is so well, or that particular individual is positive is so well. Do I really need to take this home package? The answer I say is yes. The why is because this allows us an objective, structured, methodological assessment of the child, so that it will allow you to pick up any potential deterioration on time, because picking up on time is the key and the crucial point. And we did our own experience of Madam and myself and my other colleagues. There were a couple of kids which we needed to come to the hospital, needed oxygen. Otherwise, if you don't have the structured process, those kids can be picked up delayed. It can be potentially critical. I don't want to scare anybody, but I'm just trying to give that importance of having that objective, structured process rather than a random phone call to your doctor or random phone call to your doctor friend.
Yeah, yeah. So you did mention about Madam Dr. Vijay mentioned about home quarantine. Right? Is it safe? Is it scientific? Is it useful in terms of managing? You have been doing some of the patients. How is your experience? Are children doing well?
Absolutely useful, because the first phone call that we get is very panicky and they don't know what to do. We need to guide them, nobody to hold hand with them, and they cannot visit another doctor because they can't go anywhere. Another hospitals with COVID positive patients, people are not willing to entertain them. So they have confidence. Like, look, I have been enrolled to this thing, so I'm being monitored for the next 14 days. Whatever little symptom I have, I know where to go, I know who to call. And my doctor's experience, he knows me very well, because this patient probably I've been following the past 2 years, so I know the patient in and out. So they know what little bit of change in the behavior, so they'll be able to communicate with us. And it definitely helps with Dr. Vijayanand, what he said, a mild change in the saturation from 98 to 94 and 93, if they say that, and you can find saturations are good, please come down to the COVID clinic, we need to assist your child. And they're comfortable with what they've seen us every day, and the same questions, and they also know what to look for in the child. Because if they might pick up something in the night, and they're asked to see particular signs and symptoms. So hand-holding them for the next 14 days helps them a lot with the moral support. By the end of the 14 days, actually, they're very confident and they're very happy, because initial first phone call, the phone day 14 is entirely different.
Okay, yeah, ma'am, that's good. So, Dr. Vijay, this is one common question. So, I have seen so many questions coming now to us. And okay, we talked about identifying, diagnosing, being careful, treatment, quarantine. Let's go one step back. What are the precautions we take to keep our children safe?
Yeah, okay. I mean, very important question. And I think last 6 months or 7 months, we have been bombarded with various media. If you're on a TV, or if you listen to a radio, or if you open an internet, you see all the precautions to be taken for COVID. There are specific challenges. How do I make my child to practice this? And I'll take one at a time. The one thing is the hand hygiene. So I think hand hygiene, soap and water for 20 seconds. And also properly they need to get the bubbles, and then you can show them as a play way how to get the bubbles of those. The hand sanitizer, one of the problems with the hand sanitization is, if you use frequently, if you haven't washed your hands before eating the food, and then these kids are coming with tummy aches. So I would strongly recommend to all the parents, ensure that your child washes their hands with the soap and water before they eat anything. Okay, second comes to the physical distancing. So I would say physical distancing with the kid is difficult, but if the child, the adult who is having the child close to them, if maintains that's good. But I also say avoid the situations where you need to maintain the physical distance, like going out wherever is possible. And the third thing is mask. No mask is generally recommended under 2 years unless you are continuously monitoring them, because they can block their breathing. And also but even the older children may not, like 3 years, 4 years, may not understand what they are doing. But for the little tricks, what you can do is you can ask them to choose their favorite mask. Now we also see the mask with little little diagrams on it, little pretty pictures on it, and also make the teddy or favorite toy to wear the mask. And also little cartoons are coming up showing them why it is important, and may also help. Most importantly, whether it is hand hygiene, physical distancing, and also whether it is a mask wearing properly in the right way, and this can be made, these habits can be inculcated in the children by role modeling. So kids don't do what we tell them to do, but they do what we do. So let's be a good role model, show them what needs to be done, and believe me, they will listen to you. And other thing, no to birthday parties, no to sleepovers, and but they can go a little walk in an open community where the people are not close together. They can ride the bike when there are no people, and so on. So, and there are different challenges to follow these, but I have seen a lot of kids walking to my clinics and following these.
Very good. Madam, tricky question for you. So we hear, mothers are always, cautious. So, and there are grandmothers too. So we have things about vitamin C, zinc, kashayam, everything that can lead to prevention and precaution. So what's your view on that, madam?
Okay. See, none of these have actually been proven to be an efficacy in preventing the COVID. The kashayam part of it is apart, but the vitamin C and the zinc and the vitamin D and all that. But if that gives it does no harm either, unless you go too much of vitamin C, you go to vitamin C toxicity or vitamin D toxicity. So moderate levels of these medications, I have no objection to if the child wants to take it. That's my personal opinion. And the kashayam, definitely no, because that does cause a lot of gastritis in the babies, and then you force it down their throat, and then they have gastritis, they have vomiting, and this is like adding this fuel to the fire, basically, and this increasing the problems. So a bit of vitamins here and there, I think, should be all right, but definitely a big no for all these homemade remedies.
Ma'am, any precautions? So there are a lot of questions coming in, from lactating mothers, just children less than 6 months. So any precautions taken there in feeding, a COVID positive baby or even symptomatic one? Any recommendations there, ma'am?
The current recommendation is that if the mother is positive and then there is no contraindication for breastfeeding, because it outweighs the benefits outweigh the problems. So the only thing that she has to take care of is mask, the guidelines, the wear a proper mask, wash hands and all properly before you hold the baby, and also wash your breast before you breastfeed the baby. So the COVID positive mothers can breastfeed provided they take all the precautions. And of course, mother is very sick. That's an entirely different thing where you can't breastfeed the baby, and those times you should express and then give to the babies, because breast milk is important.
Continuing on that, obviously you said no to
I think Vijay has something to say about it. Vijay, have anything to say about it? Dr. Vijay,
sorry, ma'am.
I'm sure Vijay has take on that.
I just had a little breakdown there. So say it again, ma'am.
Dr. Vijay, any precautions that you suggest?
For the mothers who are lactating?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the precautions, healthy diet, as Madam rightly said, and don't go into too exotic kashayams and all those. And because it's a healthy diet which is rich in protein and fresh vegetables, leaves and fruits. And I don't think I can add what Madam said already.
Yeah. Any special diets? See, in adults, people are talking about immunoboosting kind of diets, etc.
Yes, there's nothing like immunoboosting diet for the babies. What we suggest is in this lockdown timings, it's very tough on the mother to cook 3 meals a day, and then the temptation is a lot to eat packed meals or ready-to-eat meals and snacking unhealthy things and drink a lot of fizzy drinks and all that. I would suggest that those things should not be encouraged. And if the child wants to snack, make sure they do healthy snacking. And the diet that you make at home should have plenty of fruits and vegetables. And we say the slogan, eat with rainbow. That is, eat all the rainbow colors. Because that's good for you. Micronutrients, vitamins, everything. They're all green. All those colors, colorful vegetables and fruits should be taken. That will give you all the micronutrients and the vitamins. And of course, the pulses and all should be taken, like lentils and all. And the non-vegetarians can have a bit of fish and chicken and all that. And no red meat possible. And then, of course, meat should be cooked properly before they eat. Eggs and all are fine. And then plenty of water to drink so that they'll keep well hydrate the child. And then no fizzy drinks, and basically eat with
Dr. Vijay, so we talked about precautions, right? You mentioned about usage of masks, you mentioned about social distancing, etc. Sanitizers, we talk a lot about sanitizers. Can children use it? Is it safe for them?
Yeah, sanitizers, you mean can they use the sanitizer?
Yes.
Yes, only thing word of caution with the sanitizer is the methanol sanitizers are harmful. A alcohol base more than 60% absolutely fine, but they ensure that they don't eat with the same hands which they use the sanitizer. They have to wash before, as we earlier mentioned.
Okay. So, Madam, a question for you. So, obviously, we covered in the last session too, but some questions are coming that people think hospitals are not safe, right? This thing, there are a lot of infections in hospitals. So, how are you managing expectations? Are you calling children to hospital? They're asking, can we come and meet you if there is no basic fevers? What is the suggestion, ma'am, to parents?
Yeah, people are obviously and quite rightly worried about coming to a hospital because they think hospital is a place of sickness. And the babies, especially ones who are well babies who come for vaccinations and all, they do have their own qualms about coming to a hospital at this time of a pandemic. So hospitals all over are all geared up for this occasion. I'm sure many of the hospitals are, because we have to take care of the population, which is a healthy population, and also other problems like other pediatric problems as well, seriously. So what already mentioned earlier also is that we have taken care that every child who's entered into the hospital is screened properly at the entrance itself for the temperature, any history, any this thing. And once they enter the hospital, also separation and distancing, social distancing, alcohol, sanitization, everything, all these things are absolutely taken care of. And we have a separate child clinic for children who have a fever, cough, cold. They go to a separate entrance to a separate place where they're checked out, and only the healthy children are allowed to the hospital, to the separate area of the hospital is cordoned off, where only healthy babies come in, for example, for vaccinations, for diets, for some other illnesses, mild illnesses which are not related to COVID. Especially, we get a lot of phone calls saying, my child is due for a vaccination. Should I come in or not? Can we wait for another 2 months, because that's when the pandemic would go away? Initially, we would say, okay, wait for 1 month, probably we might be all right. But that is what we have learned, and not only us, all over the world, they have learned is that this is not going to go away, it's going to stay. So you might as well get around it. So basically, we have dedicated certain timing of the day for only the vaccination visits. Only the well babies come during that, and that's early morning between 8:30 to 10. So we call it the vaccination visit. People come, get the vaccinations, and then they go. And we have also the option of home vaccination, where we can, if the child is more than a year of age, we do offer home vaccination, so that vaccination should not be missed, because we should not add another disease which is more dangerous than COVID to a normally healthy child, like a measles or measles can be very dangerous to a child, and if it's not properly vaccinated appropriately. So it's more dangerous than COVID. So what I should like to convey is that we are taking every precaution that is possible to keep your child safe, and the environment is friendly, and then we have separate allocation of time just for vaccinations of the well babies, and then we are there throughout.
Yeah. So, Dr. Vijay, we talked about vaccination. So, younger child, primary vaccination, I think it makes a lot of sense that we should not delay at all. Come to hospital, it is safe. Older children, if they need any vaccination, do you think we can delay it, wait, or they also should follow the same protocol?
No, now the recommendation is very clear from World Health Organization, UNICEF. As Madam just said, we don't want an epidemic of other illness during this pandemic. What it means is, if the kids miss their boosters and the herd immunity levels, herd immunity in the sense the immunity of the community will come down. We don't want that. So it is very clear out that you have to take your vaccination as scheduled. I mean, little bit of delay is absolutely fine, and taking all the precautions. And one of the recommendations, avoid the mass immunization, which WHO is doesn't recommended. But when there is you have a facility of separate vaccine clinics, and even in the state sector, and also all our rainbow centers, and a home vaccination, and also we have a gated community approach where allocated timings were given. I've seen a lot of communities are doing that. So answer is no, don't delay. But at the same time, if it's delayed, don't panic. Every vaccination for a child is important, and also in fact they're suggesting that the WHO and the UNICEF suggesting that the child should also take a flu vaccine during this season, because a flu over the COVID will be a double whammy. So we don't want two infections. So answer is take the vaccines with all the precautions, and yeah.
Yeah, great. Ma'am, See, we talked about precautions. We talked about treatment of COVID. And I know we don't have much data, but what have you seen in terms of children who recover from COVID? Is there a chance of reinfection?
That is a question I think it's still not answered all over the world. There's some children who see we are quite mild and moderate, and all over the world the reinfection is a thing that's being discussed at the moment, and people are not very sure that the reinfection is happening really or not, because the virus keeps shedding after up to 90 days in some patients, and whether there is an infective virus or it's just a virus that is still there, we won't know. So there are only 1 or 2 case reports that come from New York and things, places like that, where they have said that a person is recovered, antibodies levels are low, then he has secondary infection. Which is, but this is a very, very sporadic instances that has happened so far. And those cases like this should be properly evaluated by infectious disease specialists and see what exactly happened in those cases. But so far in our practice, we have not come across that.
That's good, ma'am. I hope it continues and stays that way. So, Dr. Vijay,
Yeah.
I have kids too, and they're all at home. Obviously, it's a psychological problem for the mothers to handle the kids,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it must be causing some psychological issues for the children too. So, any suggestions? How have you been recommending your patients?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, the moment you take the word kids or children, the things which come to our mind is play, school, yeah, having parties with the friends, and so on. But remember what happened in the last 6 months. Everything is upside down. The poor children are in houses, and absolutely they do have their emotional needs, not necessarily to the psychiatric level, but they have emotional needs. They need to be dealt. So what are the potential, or what we coming across with these kids are they may feel bored, yeah. And the second thing is they may feel anxious, they may feel very fearful, and they may be scared of being unwell and scared of being dying, because the moment you start TV, the moment you switch on the radio, all these news are coming. And it's very important for the parent to understand that the kids do have emotional needs. They need to be informed what is going on, but in a simple, basic term, but not too much though, not too much though. And so one of the things to kill the boredom is they are engaging the digital divider. That is not good either. We will probably talk about it later. So how can they? So they need to have a structure when they are not going to school, only online schools, waking up just before the class and going late to the bed, and maybe 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So that loss of structure will cause more psychological problems and sleepless nights. So I would say give the structure, agree upon a plan, and talk to your child more frequently. Explain what is going on. Or don't switch on your TV or any media all the time. Just listen for some time and leave it. You have to deal with other things in this COVID pandemic. That you need to engage your kids and play board games, and also let them have a chat with their friends over the phone, of course under supervision, depending upon the age of the child, and also have a little Zoom meeting of the families, or any web meeting, not necessarily Zoom, web meeting with the families, and so on, and taking them a little walk where people are not around in the community, where it is safe, and so on. But I think, and another important point I would like to mention here is the psychological problems can increase, especially the child having a special needs already. For example, an autistic child. So you need to engage with your doctor and the caretaker who is providing the care. What are the special situation I need to deal with my autistic child? And you don't necessarily have to visit the center for therapy, but you can have a video consultation. What are the special situations? How can I turn around this environment specific and more comfortable to my child, and so on.
Madam, are you seeing any psychological issues? Are they demanding a lot of time from you now, different from before? Some comments there, ma'am?
Actually, I get a phone calls from my patient client, one of my patients saying that my child is now 10 years of age and she's very worried about COVID. She doesn't want to step out of the house. She doesn't want to come and interact with anybody. She's all the time very worried. And less than 5 years of age, they don't know what is happening, except the fact that they say you don't go there, you don't go this, and they're not allowed to the house and all that. They're not really that much affected as a slightly older age group. 5 to 12 years of age, where there's all this fear of death, fear of anxiety, fear of COVID, fear of fear of somebody dying in the house, they see it happening. Those things really affect the children. And so the adolescents, they're always present, they're rebel. So why should we do this? We are all right, we can go out, nothing's going to happen to us. So they will not listen to you. They just rebel and then they just go out and get infected and come back. So the rebellion, some kids can go into depression. So it can be that or this. Some issues are a big thing nowadays. We do get a lot of phone calls saying that my child is worried, not eating, and he says, Dr. Can you please counsel him saying that COVID is safe, nothing's going to happen, if you take your precautions and all. We do a lot of video counseling for these patients who are regular patients with us.
Great, ma'am. Dr. Vijay, last question for today. Just extension of this. You touched about digital usage, right? There is digital classroom, discussions happening. My own kids don't move away from videos. Now I don't know whether they're studying or they're looking at something. So any adverse effect can be limited. Any thoughts there for the parents?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, already we know that last decade has been increasing with this pandemic. It has exponentially increased. The digital time, the average digital usage in every child has exponentially increased across the socioeconomic strata. Because even the lower socioeconomic strata has got a mobile phone with internet nowadays on the smartphone. And what the problem they come across? Anxiety. And which is already seen. If you ask speak to our ophthalmology colleagues, eye doctors, they're saying the myopia, which is a short-sightedness. That means the kids can't see the distant object, is increasing. And the second thing is they can have a watering of eyes, what we call asthenic symptoms. They can rubbing the eyes and redness. And the third is the postural problems and the body aches. And fourth, there will be communication issues. And when they are so much immersed into this virtual and digital world, there are communication issues and also attention deficit. So there are multiple problems. Now at the present, if you look at the data, 1 in 6 children need to wear glasses. But it is estimated if this continues in next 20 years, every other child will need a glasses. But I wonder that can be shortened if this pandemic continues. And what can we do about it? When for the digital, what I would say is we need to inculcate the digital discipline in the kids. What does it mean? Just a simple mnemonic, ABC. So because we have to accept that they have to use the digital media, because for classes and just now we said psychological problem, they have to chat with the friends and the family. So they have to accept the reality. But we need to minimize the side effect, optimize the benefits of this. How do I do it? As I said, ABC. A is adjust your screen and ambience. What I mean by that is the screen should be at the elbow level and there should be ambient light, not in the dark, So, and the ambience at least near to the window, as much as good ambience. And then B means blinking eyes frequently. So blinking eyes frequently. C means change in behavior. We already talked about certain behaviors. One of the behavior when you are using the digital device is 20-20-20 rule. That means every 20 minutes, if you are attending online classes, look distant, which is 20 feet away for 20 seconds. So that will decrease the strain on your eye. And there are other behaviors, like for example, don't let the child use the digital device 2 hours before sleep. And anybody in the family will not carry a phone or any smart device into the dining table. And also there is a concept of a digital free bedroom. I'm depending upon. So, or keep all them aside. So these important habits need to be inculcated so that we can minimize this side effect. But bear in mind, as we already discussed, the kids don't do what you want them to do. They do what you do. So become a role model to inculcate the digital discipline so that you can optimize the benefits and minimize the side effects.
20-20-20, that sounds cool. Okay, that's good. So we are nearly ending our time. So, madam, a quick summary for parents, maybe just 2 or 3 points, reiterate. That will be really helpful.
What I'd like to say is that please do not panic. The incidence of COVID in children is very, very less compared to adults. And even if it comes also, most of them do not have any symptoms. They just run around and play. They're running around playing. And the ones with the mild symptoms also requiring oxygen for about 2 to 3 days, and then they are hospitalized for 2 or 3 days. They're going back home without any side effects. And then, but you have to keep an eye on them for 15 days to the end of the month or so, to make sure they don't have any after effects after the COVID thing. And then take home quarantine if possible, and be in the care under the vision of continuous monitoring of your healthcare worker.
Great. Dr. Vijay, any closing summary from your side?
Yeah, so Madam already mentioned nicely about the COVID thing in children, but what I would say is don't limit everything around COVID during this pandemic. There are other needs your children have. That could be a physical, emotional, social, and psychological needs. And look after them and try to optimize in the resources you have. When I say that, so a healthy diet, and you can also do your physical exercise with your children at home itself in a different ways and forms. And you can play little games. And also, try to optimize their learning, because we don't want to lose the educational these children. And also, most important is all behaviors will promote the health. So, and also don't forget about your preventive health. The preventive health in the form of vaccines, which we talked about earlier as well. So not only COVID, don't forget the package of the care your child needs during this COVID pandemic time.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Dr. Vijay. So I think, Madam, you might get a lot of questions separately on your Kashayam comment. There are still a lot of questions about Kashayam, Chavanprash. So home remedies, people are not wanting to leave it. So you might get questions from your patients, but I think both of you have been wonderful. Thank you so much. I think it's come from the experience over the last 4 months that you've seen COVID. To all our viewers, want to mention that both the doctors are available on email. Dr. Venkata Lakshmi, her email is dr, which is Dr. Venkata Lakshmi, VENKATALAKSHMI at rainbowhospitals.in. And Dr. Vijayanand is available on email at drvijayanand.jamalpuri at rainbowhospitals.in. So thank you so much for all of you joining. Stay home, stay safe, and have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.